Hey everyone, it's Sarah, and today we're going to be taking a look at multi-select lists and using Figma variables to prototype a working select all button. So I've put together a little bit of a start to what we need in order to make this happen, and then we're going to use this as the example to activate that select all button. So we've got a couple of components up here. I set up a checkbox with 3 states, an unchecked, a checked, and an indeterminate state, and that's going to come into play later. We need a component for our list items. There's no way to have an indeterminate list item, so that's just going to need an unchecked and a checked state. And then we have the select all, which is going to have the 3 different states, unchecked, checked, and indeterminate. And these are actually going to be separate booleans, so you'll see how this is set up here. We've got checked for true and false and indeterminate for true and false. So each of these has corresponding booleans there. And then we do need to set up our variables, which I have not yet done. So there's a couple different things we need to set up here. We need to have a variable, boolean variable for all being selected. We need to have variables for each of our items. I'm going to go ahead and stick with the fruit names here, but you could do item 1, item 2, item 1 is selected, item 2 is selected. But we'll go ahead and do apple. Going to duplicate this a couple times. Orange, lemon, and kiwi. Then we do need to have another boolean for indeterminate. We're just going to stick with ind there. I'll keep that up with all. And then just a couple of string variables, because the total number of checked items is what's going to be impacting that select all. So we're going to set up a string for total items, and we'll set that to what our total is. So we have 4 list items in our example. And then we're going to create another, oh sorry, this did not need to be a string, this needed to be a number. She said confidently while she selected the wrong thing. A number variable, total items 4, and then we'll do another number that's going to be selected items, and that is currently set to 0. And so these are sort of the building blocks that we're going to be assigning to our example here in order to achieve this complex map of states. And I find that when I'm dealing with variables in Figma, it really helps me to talk through, sometimes out loud, sometimes typed out like this, exactly what behavior needs to happen for everything that I'm trying to set up. Then when I get into that prototyping menu, I do have some sort of guide to follow to help me understand exactly what each user behavior is activating in my design. So let's apply some of these variables to our example design here. This select all button, we're going to assign its checked state to all and its indeterminate state to indeterminate. And then for each of these list items, we're going to go ahead and set their checked item to their corresponding name. So we got apple, orange, lemon, and kiwi. All right. And then with those now all assigned, you might have noticed that there's this floating indeterminate in there, and that's because I did have an indeterminate state as part of the list item. I'm just going to get rid of that right now. There, you'll see that it is gone and everything is assigned as we wanted it. And then finally, we are going to, you don't need to assign anything else. We're going to go ahead and start with that interaction. Let's start with the select all button, and we're actually going to do the prototyping for this at the variant level in the component. Let's work our way down from this unchecked select all state. So if the user selects the unchecked select all, if items were unchecked, they are now checked. If some items were unchecked, those items are also now checked. So there's a couple of things we need to set up here in the prototype. So when they click this, all becomes true. All is now checked. We'll set that up first. So we'll set variable all to true. In the same vein, we're going to keep the variable indeterminate to false, which might happen automatically, but you're going to see me put it in there pretty much every time just to cover all my bases. And then we're going to set all of our items to true to turn on those checkboxes. Apple, true. And this can get very tedious for long lists, but luckily in doing it at the component level, it means that we don't need to do it on every individual level. So we are saving a little bit of time with this type of setup. Lemon to true, not to false. If anyone knows good keyboard shortcuts for this, shout out, because it takes 800 years. Okay, so with all of those true, we've finished the Boolean part. Now we need to bring in those number variables. So what's happening numerically when we do this? When we select all, we want the selected items to match the total items. We want the selected items to be 4, like the total items. We don't need to say selected items need to be 4. We can actually set this up as set that selected items to the total items. So when the user says select all, selected items becomes equivalent to whatever we've set total items to be. So that's numbers, for there. And then the very last thing we're gonna add is an actual variant change in the component. We want this unchecked state to become checked. So we'll just add a change to at the bottom here and we'll change it to checked. And then for the checked state, when the user selects the checked select all, we want all items to now be unchecked. So we're just gonna do the reverse. We're gonna set up a set variable all to false. We're gonna keep that indeterminate variable false, and we're gonna set the fruit back to false. And orange false, and lemon false, and kiwi false. Then we'll do some very simple math again. We're gonna set selected items to 0. And we're gonna change the state back to unchecked. Okay, what happens at this indeterminate state? So if a user selects select all when it's in its indeterminate state, in the way that I've laid this out, I would like all items to now become checked. So this is a situation where a user has maybe checked apple and orange, and then they go and hit select all after selecting 2 of them. How I would see it in this, especially when there's select all next to that top check button where it's written out, I would assume that then lemon and kiwi would become checked as well. This behaves differently across the web, and I don't think that there is a consensus on one behavior being right. I think the consensus is that you have to be consistent within whatever system you're using. So for instance, Gmail, if you select like 2 of your emails from your inbox and then go and hit that select all button, it's actually going to deselect the 2 you just selected instead of selecting all of the rest. So that button behaves a little bit the opposite of how I want to set this up, but for my setup here, I want select all in its indeterminate state to act a lot like select all in its unchecked state. So when we have that set up, we're going to have this is going to set variable all to true, just like the empty state. It's going to set variable indeterminate to false, and then it's going to set all the fruit to true. True, 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 and true. Finally, we'll do a numbers game again, and this we're going to set selected items to total items, so we're bringing that back to 4, and we are going to change the state to selected. So very, very similar to that select all. Change to checked, intermediate is off. Okay, so that's the select all button prototyped. We're going to then move to the individual items, which again, we're going to do at the component level because this all behaves the same. It doesn't change its behavior just because this one is apple and this one is orange. These checkbox act the same. Okay. Individual items. So we're going to start with the math on these ones. So when you select an unselected item, it becomes selected. The other thing that we want to happen is we want the total number of selected items to increase. So we're going to start there. we'll set the variable selected items to selected items plus 1. And then we can set up some conditionals because now we have a bunch of ifs in mind. So at this point, if there are no selected items, that all is going to be false. So we'll start there with our if else. So if selected items is equal to 0 at this point, then all is false. So all is false and indeterminate is false. I keep trying to say intermediate, indeterminate. Okay, now if selected items is 1 or more, things look a little different. You always have to be selected totally out of it to add this. Okay, if selected items is greater than or equal to 1, this is when the indeterminate finally becomes true. When the whole list is not selected, but a couple of it is, that's when we want indeterminate. So we're going to set all to false and indeterminate to true. And then finally, if selected items equals total items, so if selected items is 4, then all is true and indeterminate is false. So we'll do that last one. So if selected items is equal to total items, we set variable all to true, and we set variable indeterminate to false. Okay, so that's checking one of these items. And now we want to go over unchecking one of these items. Oh, actually, before we do that, I forgot the variant change. So we do need to change this from the checked variant or unchecked variant to checked variant. Change to checked. Okay, now let's reverse what we've done. So we'll start with some math again. So on click, we're going to set variable selected items to selected items minus 1. And then we can do all of those conditionals. So on this state as well, if selected items is equal to 0, then all is false and indeterminate is false. If selected items is greater than or equal to 1, oh, sorry. Again, keyboard shortcuts, I want them for this. We've done it twice wrong. Third time's the charm. So selected items is greater than or equal to 1. This is where the indeterminate becomes active once again. So we set variable all to false and indeterminate to true. And then if select items meets that total items, we have all set to true and indeterminate set to false. So if selected items equals total items, all is true and indeterminate is false. And then finally, that variant interaction, we switch it back to its unchecked state. Okay, so change to unchecked. Okay, now you'll see that each of our line items here has that interaction as part of it. These are inherited interactions from the variable. Inherited actions from the variables. There was some lingering previous work there. So let's take a look at what we've done. The tiniest prototype ever. Select all, everything is selected. Select all again, everything is unselected. Just one, uh-oh, so we have a little bit of an error here. What's going on with just one? Did I forget to have? Yes. So we don't have that change to. I feel like I really foreshadowed that not appearing. There we go. So the last thing we want that to do is change to checked equals true. And we want that at the end because we want all of this to sort of work itself out first. Oh, see, a lot of things have moved into the slightly wrong space. So if selected items is greater than or equal to 1, these need to be in here, because these are what we want to happen in that case. Okay, and then at the very end, change to checked equals true. Okay, let's run that one more time. We'll go straight to that. So you'll see selecting 1 brings up that indeterminate state, and that's going to be there as we check all of them all the way down. When we get to 4, it should switch, yep, to that fully selected state. So let's unselect them again, click through a few times, and if we click this indeterminate state, it should change it to all of them being selected. Okay, so there is a variant heavy, ooh, see, here we go. All are selected, and then deselecting doesn't work. So there's another bit of troubleshooting that we can do. So if all are selected, and we click this, if selected items equals, see, this moved again. Let me put these back in their correct homes. If selected items equals total items, and this is out of there. Okay, I'm not sure what happened there. Oh, see, a couple of things. Selected items are 0, indeterminate is false. Something wacky happened there, but let's double check our work. Selected items is 0, all becomes false, indeterminate becomes false. Selected items is more than 1, all is false, indeterminate is true. Selected items is equal to total items, all is true, and indeterminate is false. Looks good to me. Let's check that use case one more time. So that was a situation where all were selected and we wanted to deselect 1. And there it is, returning it to its indeterminate state. That should return us to select all, and we should be able to freely deselect these now as we see fit. Okay, so a little bit of troubleshooting at the end, but all the good design deserves a little bit of troubleshooting. And that is the way one would set up this type of interaction. Then you can make it a little prettier if you wanted. We could maybe have our list items have some kind of fill, maybe a light green to show that you've successfully chosen them. Let's see what this looks like. Yeah, just a cute little list here. Thanks for tuning in. I hope that all makes sense. It's a pretty complicated interaction, but this is the simplest way that I have seen to do it, and so I hope it helps you out when you're trying to execute it on your own.